Well, good morning everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all fighting fit and well. Look, today I've come back to the South Lawson Waterfall Walk. This is a series of videos that I'm doing. This is part 3. I think there's another 2 more parts to finalise this particular project I'm doing here on YouTube at the South Lawson Waterfall Walk. Now, today we have horrendous weather here. It's blowing a gale, they're predicting rain, and it's very, very cold. However, where I'm currently situated, I'm sort of like on a ridge in this particular area here. And fingers crossed that when I get down into the gullies, into the gully here, that the wind will be a lot less. I hope the wind's a high wind here today. But I have a feeling that today will be all about exposure bracketing or exposure blending, because I don't want any of the blurs happening with the ferns around the waterfalls here. The falls that I'm looking for today are Federal Falls, and they're further down into the gully, as I said. So this morning at 4 o'clock I got up, and as I said, I don't live very far from here, and it was blowing a gale, and I thought, oh, do I come out? Well, the thing with landscape photography is, yes, you've got to get out, and if the conditions aren't right, you can always come back the next day. But I'm going to give it a go. I suppose I could have sat in front of the open fire drinking coffee with the cats and watching YouTube, but that's not going to enable me to grab the shots that I hope I can get here today. Now, you can probably hear the wind here. It is very windy, but as I said, fingers crossed, I'm going to give it a go. We'll go down, I'll set up the gear, and I'll run through with you on the settings and what I'm doing. But the theme for today's video is how to tell a story in your photography. But that's a little bit later on. I'll grab the gear out of the car, we'll go down and we'll set up, and I'll meet you down there. Well, as you can see, I've made it to the bottom of the falls, and it's been a bit of a bush bash to get to this one. The track's not too bad, it's pretty dry actually, but just over here we've got this massive sloping rock shelf and then virtually a cliff at the end of the waterfall, so I'll have to be very careful that if I'm walking backwards to remember what's behind me just over here. Now, the wind's dropped, but then every now and again it'll blow to about 25 kilometers an hour, and that's when I'll stop shooting. At the beginning of this video I said that I might have to exposure bracket using different shutter speeds to freeze the motion of the greenery or the vegetation around the actual waterfall. But there's another technique you can use, and that is to wait like we have now, where there's hardly any movement at all between the wind breaks, then take your shot. It would help if you have a cable release or an intervalometer. I just call them cable releases, and you can quickly take those shots when the wind dies down. That saves you blending the images back in post-edit in Photoshop. But as you can see now, the leaves are moving. There's a bit of a wind coming through here now, but when that wind stops, that's probably when I'll take the shots, and also combine it with exposure bracketing as well, just different shutter speeds. So overall, there's a couple of good compositions here. It's quite a different waterfall to all the others in this area. It's a very tiered situation, but as you can see up there, the light's not too bad, so I can crop that out in the camera. I don't like to have sky in my waterfall photography or waterfall images. It's too distracting, and it makes the exposure a bit hard to obtain, or the right exposure. So I can crop the top out of that, which isn't too bad. Just the main feature of the waterfall is probably the midsection with all those ferns behind. And as you can see, they are moving. So I'll have to be very, very careful there with what I do. So yes, we'll give it a go. Don't know how it'll work out, but we're here, we've made the effort, and that's the main thing, make the effort. Let's go. Okay, I've come to the front of the waterfall here. This is tough conditions, the wind has picked up again, so I'm trying to work out the best shutter speed for this waterfall and to keep everything in without being blurred, of course, with the movement of the wind and the ferns here. It's quite a nice scene, but it's very challenging. These rocks here are very, very slippery. As you can see, I've got the bogs on, and once again, thank God for that, because geez, they're working really well. These boots on these rocks, this rock is like glass. It's so slippery because of the black moss. But basically the shot that I've done here is a full-on, and I'll turn that camera around in a moment and show you. It's a full-on shot, and yeah, basically we're just doing our best. So I'll take a few more and then see what we come up with. Well, as you can see, that's what I'm looking at now. I've come up off the glass covered rocks here, and I'm actually on a sort of like a mini cliff looking directly sort of like towards the middle of the waterfall there. The way the light's working, I'm not really worried about blowing out highlights here because it's quite overcast, and I think now what I have to do is I really want to focus my attention on this part of the waterfall, because up the top it's a bit chaotic, so I will concentrate on this section here, and I'll wait for the wind to die down and take a few shots. Now I'll turn the camera around and just show you what's to my right here. Now, as you can see there, we have a sort of like a little cave type of thing happening there. That should make an interesting shot because I've got the ferns up the top, the water there with the streaks. I might have to crop this. I'll probably do it around about a 16:9 actually. Just to make it more visually appealing. Now the thing with this is most people think or relate landscape photography to big wide vistas, and that's true to some extent, but to tell a story with your photography you really need to photograph on the certain elements or certain sections of the scene, and that builds the story up until the main photograph, meaning the whole image. So try and capture parts of the scene and then correlate them in with the large image at the end. That way you're telling a story about the whole environment. I mean, if you just come here and take a photo of the waterfall, it doesn't really represent much. All it is a waterfall. And the internet we're overly saturated, pardon the pun, with these type of photographs. So if you want to elevate your photography to the next level and be different from everyone else, I suggest you take certain sections or photograph certain sections of the main scene. Now, if you can't get close to the main scene, we'll use a telephoto lens and pick out certain elements. And this way, I think you'll find that your images will be so much better than what's actually out there that people can see, or that we see on a daily basis. So the idea with our photography these days, I believe, is to do something different, and by actually photographing certain sections of a scene, you are telling a story of the environment that's in front of you. So give that a go next time you're out with your camera. So what I'll do, I'll set up the stills camera. I'll take a few more shots. The wind has now died down again. This is one thing about landscape photography. It's one of the few genres of photography that makes you slow down, and you know, that's probably why I like landscape photography. So what I'll do, I'll set up the stills camera, take a few more shots, and you'll see these shots at the end of this video. Okay, I've now changed positions for the final few shots of the morning, and boy, this is a real challenging waterfall to photograph, not only because of the wind that's happening, but it's actually very hard to get to, and it's been a real battle, but I like it. You know, that's what our landscape photography is all about. So this particular shot, as you can see, got these rocks on the right hand side, which forming like a mini frame sort of thing. We've got the little cave over there on the face, and then the actual waterfall with the ferns. But it's the actual ferns that I'm really interested in, and that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to tell a story by capturing more of what's around the waterfall than what actually is. As I said, the light's really, really good here. It's probably the best you could probably find or have on a morning like this. But the breezes, now the breeze has dropped again, so it's basically me against nature here this morning. But I think nature's going to beat me in the end. But I'm in this little rock sort of platform here, and as you can see, that's the actual scene that I want to photograph. So we'll give it a go. Basically, the settings that I'm looking at here, I've currently at f16 this time, because there is quite a large depth of field required here. I suppose I could focus stack it, but I don't think I need to. It'll be nice and sharp. I'm currently at, well, for that particular shot, I'm currently at 17mm on full frame, but I will probably come into 30, 35, then 40 with various shots, because as I said, I want to concentrate on the ferns here. I'm not particularly close to this waterfall, so there's no spray or anything like that going on. But I'll take this shot. The settings are f16. It's giving me a shutter speed of just over 1 second, which is just about right. It's not going to blow out that water, because that is the highlight, even though it's a bit dim this morning. And my ISO was at 640, and the reason being, it's very dark here, plus I want to get that shutter speed around 1.5, 1.6, or 1/6 or 2 seconds. So I've managed to achieve that by raising the ISO, and as I said last week, don't be afraid to raise your ISO in these modern day cameras, because they can handle it, don't be frightened. So I'll take these shots and we'll see how we go. A 2-second timer. Really, really nice. That worked out really well. That's a nice image. It's probably not the best one, but it is a nice image. And I'm also using the Nissi Landscape Circular Polarizer, which takes that sheen off those brown or the goldy coloured rocks. So you'll see these images at the end of the video, and it's almost time to wrap it up here and go home and now sit in front of the fire. Well, that's it guys, that's another episode of sniper photography finished here today at the South Lawson Waterfall Walk. Look, conditions were quite frankly horrendous. I had good light, the light was absolutely beautiful, but the wind played havoc with the exposures and the shutter speeds obviously around the waterfall with all the leaves and the ferns moving around. So I basically had to exposure blend or exposure bracketing. I also took shots when the breeze died down, so that way I've got everything covered. It's still windy now like it was a couple of hours ago. I got some okay sort of images, but we'll soon see when I put them back into post-edit back in the studio back home. But other than that, it wasn't too bad of a morning, but it goes to prove one thing, that it doesn't matter how bad the weather is, as long as it's safe, there's no excuse for you not to go out and take photographs, because in inclement weather or very ordinary weather like we've had here this morning, the light is so good to work with. It's very manageable, but unfortunately for me today, the wind played havoc, even down in the gullies itself around Cataract, around the Cataract Fall area there. So, but other than that, it wasn't too bad. As I said, I think I got some fairly okay sort of images. So that's part 3 done here at the South Lawson Waterfall Walk. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and the bell next door so you don't miss anything. I much appreciate your support. Any questions or comments, please leave them down below. So that's it for me. I'm going home to have a cup of coffee and sit near the open fire and have some nice toast actually, so hopefully that'll warm me up. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. As I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, and bye for now.